Welcome to an all-new Restoration Today podcast
brought to you by Abadex. Since 1983, Abadex has been serving the restoration, remediation, industrial, construction, and disaster response markets with thousands of products from some of the most trusted brands in the business. Abadex is a customer-first distributor where service, knowledge, and community matter. For more, visit abadex.com.
Hey there, thanks for checking out another episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Today, we are in the technology world. So we have another tech update today. I'm joined by Ryan Pritchard, who is from PSA or Canam Systems. We were just talking about off camera what his actual title is, which is sales manager, but he's really a jack of all trades and does many things. And if you look at his LinkedIn profile, he's a restoration efficiency expert. So I love it, all of it. Ryan, thank you very much for joining me. I know we have a lot to talk about, but I'm going to start by just having you introduce yourself and your background in the industry, how long you've been with PSA, Canam, all of that.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Michelle. I appreciate being on the podcast today and the opportunity to talk. So Canam/PSA, we started in 1994 just as a technology provider who created accounting solutions for a number of different niche markets. We jumped into the restoration and property insurance space in 2002, where we partnered with Xactware and JPP in the early days. That was kind of the trifecta of they did the estimating, JPP did the job management, and we did the accounting. I joined the PSA team in 2010. Just as a sales representative, kind of learning the industry and how it was kind of different from some of the other industries that I've worked in. I come from a background of customer service, relationship management, and sales. So that's kind of my background. So kind of approaching this industry and seeing how relationships work between the carriers and contractors and some of the vendors was definitely different than what I was used to. And certainly from a technology perspective, something that we learned, kind of early on is that everything was very disconnected, in this space. And so that was something that we had to kind of become acclimatized to, is that, hey, we can't share everything or get everything, in the early days, because everything was kind of behind all of these walls, so to speak, on the data side.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to get into data a little bit later, but over the years, what has set PSA apart from the other kind of job management platforms that are out there, especially in the last few years? There have been a lot of new ones on the scene, but, earlier 2010s, there's a few, but what has set you apart?
So kind of what I was mentioning before, we actually started as an accounting system. So a lot of these job management systems, they're just a job management system. So they've started really from a philosophy of the production side. What do we need to fix production wise? And a lot of that ties into like workflow and communication. So the approach that we took, and has always kind of been our unique aspect on the job management side, is we really started focusing on the financials and managing costs, which is kind of a taboo topic, certainly in this industry, when you're dealing with how pricing is set up and how we deal with, recording costs and things. So it was a challenge in the beginning, but certainly it was an eye-opening experience when working with contractors who said, like, I honestly don't know where this job stands financially. And we were like, well, how's that possible? I mean, you have a financial system, you have a management system, you should know, all your costs. But like I said, there was a disconnect. And so we really approached it from, how do we bridge that gap between production and finance? And so we started kind of as a software solution that really kind of honed in on, let's nail down our job costs. Let's know what our margins are. Let's work towards being profitable, because at the end of the day, a lot of these companies are in business to be profitable and grow, so they can focus on helping the customer and not worried about, paying their employees or keeping their doors open. Right. So that's a challenge that I think a lot of software vendors have is, do I focus on the customer service side? Do I focus on the production and process side? Do I focus on the financial side? And each one of them is kind of honed in on a specific area, while letting some of those other areas kind of fall by the wayside.
Yep. So how have you kind of helped contractors hone in on that accounting side. I was actually just talking to a consultant in the industry yesterday who coaches specifically on the accounting and educating on P&Ls and what they mean and all of that. And that's a pain point in the industry where a lot of owners are like, I want to be out in the field and running jobs and doing that. I don't want to look at numbers on a screen. So how do you kind of convince contractors and coach them toward being more numbers aware and understanding those numbers?
Well, part of it is not trying to tell them that it's an accounting role as far as like, don't worry, the accountant will pick up the slack on those timesheets or that material costs. It's really teaching people that it is part of the workflow process. So nobody would argue with you that they have to fill out a mitigation document to record drying logs or log, notes against the customer so that we can go back in case the customer has issues. The philosophy of tracking costs is part of that process as well. We are, as contractors, recording our employees' time. That's part of how we pay them. We are recording what we purchase for those jobs, whether it's consumables or materials. The philosophy change is not waiting till the end to do these things. It's incorporating that in the process. And certainly for a lot of companies, it's kind of an uphill battle because it's not something that they're used to doing. And as soon as you start mentioning numbers, they immediately say like, oh, well, that's not a responsibility of the project manager or the technician, right? That's my CPA's job. And so it's this philosophy like somebody else will do it. And the challenge, again, like from an accounting philosophy, is that accounting systems were always used as a way to look back and see how did we do last quarter? Right? It's a philosophy where we're reconciling what happened instead of using numbers to look forward to say, let's position ourselves for profitability. And so that's even a challenge when even coming into the restoration space, because a lot of these jobs are such short turnaround times from when production starts to when we finish an invoice that if we wait till the end, a lot of those costs never even get looked at until the job's long closed. And at that point, we're saying, okay, next time we'll do better. Next time we'll make sure that we don't spend more labor than we allocated or use more materials than we should have. And in that philosophy, I think is something that in the property restoration space, we're dealing with this concept of being reactive, naturally because we're dealing with disasters. But that also plays into our workflow, that plays into our financial tracking as a way of reacting to what happened rather than being proactive in that approach. And that's something that, again, I'm not going to say it's an easy challenge because I think everybody struggles with it, but it's something that we kind of put as a key element of making these systems work and making that business grow and be profitable.
Okay. All right. So as there's been a lot of changes in the software space just in the last maybe year or so, there's also been a lot of talk about integration, collaboration, working together, making it easier for the contractor instead of having all of these different options out there to bring all of the software kind of together. So what is your viewpoint on integrating and working more hand in hand with other companies in the industry? Like I know that you were part of InsurTech's restoration playbook that just came out. So it's also relationships are good too, right? So what do you think needs to happen on the integration collaboration side?
Well, I think one of the things that a lot of systems try to strive for is to be that all-in-one solution. And even at PSA, we call ourselves an ERP solution, which is meant to really capture all the core things into one system. But what we realized early on is that you can't be the best at everything, nor can a development team focus on all the different aspects of restoration and really understand how those are all going to communicate and connect together. So even early on, like when we jumped into this space, the first thing we did is we partnered with Xactware and JPP because they were the experts in those areas. And rather than reinvent the wheel, we said, let's partner together so we can share that information so that we are truly eliminating duplication, that we're providing real-time transparency to where it needs to go. Because in the insurance restoration space, it's not just the contractor has to see it, it's the customer, it's the carrier, the TPA. They're all requiring all of this information to be real time. And in order to do that, you have to be able to play nicely with all of these vendors. And so we don't see it as, oh, we're losing market share on the mitigation side, or we're losing market share on the 3D tour side. It's that we're gaining an element that we, quite frankly, don't want to jump into that space. And we're going to let those vendors continue to be the leading technology in that area. And by partnering together, we're creating a stronger overall solution for the contractor that lets them at the end choose what are the pieces that are going to be the right fit for my business, instead of saying, hey, you have to fit into this model or it's not going to work.
So what are some criteria that you offer to contractors who are trying to figure out the best fit for software for their company?
I mean, from a technology perspective, we kind of break it into stages of really understanding first at the business side, what is it that you're actually trying to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a challenge, I think, for a lot of companies, because they're looking for these tools to really fix things that may actually be challenges within the company itself, not necessarily a challenge with software, but with process, with the right people. And they feel that by implementing these technologies, those problems will just disappear. And so part of that technology analysis is really looking at themselves internally and saying, well, what is it that we're truly trying to achieve here? What is the actual struggle? Is it that we can't keep up with the data requirements? Is that we can't keep the right people managing these aspects of these systems? Is it the fact that there's a requirement being pushed on us by the industry, which is something that, from a technology perspective, we're now seeing these trends of, hey, this is a required tool now, and this is a required piece of software. And those have always been in the industry, but they just seem to be kind of multiplying now. So, in the early days where it's like, hey, everybody has to use Exact, now it's, hey, everybody has to use Exact and a mitigation platform and has to communicate with these claim tools where all the TPAs are using their own system. And so it becomes at that point less of a choice and more of, how do I get all of this to work together so I'm not having to scale my resources to keep up with the technology?
Yep. Do you ever have contractors come to you and they're like, all right, we're really interested in your system or software, but we're continually concerned about how much information and data software companies are getting, and then the carrier is going to get, and how much they're going to know about the inside workings of our business and stuff like that? Like, what is your response to that for people who are concerned about data?
I mean, again, early on, approaching this from an accounting perspective, that's probably the most concern that companies have with the data is, I don't want people to see my margins. Mm-hmm. And even internally, I don't want certain employees seeing each other's rates or what their incentive payouts are. And so for us, security has always really been a number one priority, as for any technology company out there that is required to host and maintain private information in the cloud. And, part of the challenge, again, with being also an integrated partner is that part of that integration comes with this understanding that we meet a certain security compliance just to talk to that vendor. And so working with companies like CoreLogic and Exactware, there's a whole list of things that you have to comply with just from a security perspective, because there are customers' details in there that they don't want, getting leaked out or having someone have access to a customer list. And so from that perspective, we have to comply, certainly, to just be able to participate. The second piece is the information that we are sharing with these partners typically is restricted to the contractor's discretion. So yes, it's integrated, but it doesn't mean that it's an all or none approach, right? So a lot of it, again, is educating people what information we should be sharing and what information really is just about us keeping an audit trail of what happened.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I didn't know if anything else about
no.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I want to talk about your rebrand. That is part of the reason we are here, and that is very exciting. So you rolled out a rebrand on February 15th. That's the week we're recording this. So let's start with, what was the purpose behind the rebrand? Why did you decide it's time we need to refresh?
So again, I hate to go back to the origin of PSA and Canam, but in the early days when people saw us, they recognized PSA as, hey, these guys are an accounting solution, right? So PSA stood for Proven Solutions Accounting, right? That's the the reduced version of what PSA means. And so that's kind of always carried with us over the years, that when people are looking at us, they're like, I already have an accounting system, so I really need to look for job management or CRM. And over time, we've evolved beyond just base accounting to say, hey, we now offer full job management, CRM, data analytics. Back in November, we launched the new customer experience portal with Proven On-Site, which again allows contractors kind of like an a la carte menu to say, here are the tools that I need at this stage, and then I can grow into the rest. So where the branding initiative really kind of kickstarted was, we need to change this idea that we are just an accounting system. And so we changed PSA to be proven software applications and not proven solutions accounting, to really let people know that we are more than just an accounting system. And then we looked at all of our products, which over time they were launching at different periods, and they each had different names. So even our internal customers were like, okay, I need the job management side, then the mobile side is named something else, and then I have this app. It's like, let's make it real simple for our customers to say, we have 3 core products: accounting, job management, and CRM. And that's how they're branded now. And in those products, there's a lot of great features and functionality, but they're all inclusive within those 3 core products. And so we just wanted to make it really easy for people to say, hey, I'm ready to jump in on the job side, and maybe I'm going to transition to the CRM side in 6 months. And then when we're ready, for our new year end, I'm going to switch to the accounting. And we made that process very easy for the contractor to, like I said, grow into that solution. And so the branding was just relabeling what we offered, and then making it really easy for our customers to say, oh, these are all the pieces that I can choose from now.
Okay. What do you find that property owners are looking for from restoration companies when it comes to technology and the amount of updates? And, there's a lot that contractors can and cannot provide. So what are you finding that your contractors need to be providing to their customers now?
So I think the misconception is that customers want to be alerted all the time of all of these things that are happening. Because that's kind of been like inground into our brains from a technology side, is like carriers want every date, every note, every photo. Customers just want to know the important stuff. They want to be kept in the loop and feel like they know what's transpiring. And I like to say that the shift of customers from even like 3 years ago to now, customers don't want to log into a system. They don't want emails, because nobody's checking their email anymore. They're out on their phones. They're looking at TikTok videos. They're on social media. Everything's like these like bite-sized pieces of information that is readily accessible. Yep. And so the customer experience has changed from one which is, hey, here's a 20-page report that you can read, to, I just need the one paragraph that I care about. And so when we launched the customer experience piece in November, it was focused on the customer gets a link, they open it, it shows the technician driving to their home address, it allows them to communicate via text message, and then they put their phone down and they're getting alerts that, oh, the technician showed up, or, oh, they finished on site today. Just those critical pieces that let the customer know, hey, I'm keeping you up to date on what's transpiring. And if they need more information, there are certainly tools that they can access to collaborate with the contractor so that they feel like they have input into how that job is progressing. Okay. And that's kind of the evolution of customer experience that I've seen, is that people want to be involved, but they don't want to have to jump through hoops to do it.
Yep. What is advice you've given over the years to contractors as they do make a change in their software platform for getting the rest of their team on board, buy-in, trained, all of that? It's a little easier maybe as the generations are changing, but I remember when I first came into the industry, this was like one of the huge pain points, is people trying to get people to learn the software. So,
well, it's funny. I just did a presentation to a company the other day, and they said, hey, we have a gentleman in our office who all he does is write on a notepad, and he's never going to change. So we've just come to terms with that. And, it's funny to hear someone say that, but part of that transition is really saying we need the whole team to buy in, because the idea of only 25% of our guys are going to use the system just tells me that it's not going to give them the type of information they want to actually take advantage of the technology. And I think that there are a lot of great tools out there. And the reason that those tools end up, the customer leaves or decides to go another correction, isn't necessarily because the tool didn't do its job. It's because they can't get the information they want out of it. And a lot of that has to do with employee buy-in and really understanding, what does the employee get out of that technology? I find, working with a lot of different size companies, there's this dichotomy of, hey, we're moving ahead with this. It's mandated to use it. That's kind of the answer that these guys are given to like embrace this new technology. And yes, it's a big change. And yes, nobody likes change, but to be forced into something, that just adds a lot more animosity to that transition, that you're not going to get that level of buy-in that you want from those staff. Granted, there are, companies that have made it work, but when you look at the workforce and how that's even changed over the past couple of years, we're hiring people off the street that, again, maybe aren't tech savvy or have, the skill set they need to use these things, and they don't understand the why of the technology. And I think that is a fundamental piece in both the decision-making and the onboarding phase, because it's only going to work if everyone in our team is collaborating and working together for that common goal. And they need to know what they're going to get out of that, whether it's, extra time back in their day, less paperwork, less headaches, whatever that reasoning is, it has to be communicated to the team so that they're like, yes, I want to use this because it's going to make my life easier, my customers happier, and I'm going to get better margins because I'm going to be seeing, what's transpiring, right? Now there's a drive behind, I got to use this to get that advantage.
You just hit on something so important for generations right now, and the why. I just published an article today on teaching your technicians the why of odor removal, which seems crazy, but if you don't understand, they want to know, especially millennials and Gen Zers, they want to know why they're doing it, not just how. They want to know why. So the old school way of training doesn't work so much anymore. All right. Before we wrap it up, I'm curious what kind of tech innovations you see on the horizon for the next maybe like 5 or 10 years in the restoration industry. What do you think is coming?
I mean, we've started to see this transition of, I don't want to use the word AI because I think when people hear that, they're thinking like robots and things that are communicating, but technology that has a logic set that helps people understand how to do things, I think is becoming more relevant. Again, because the need is, we don't have the time to train people properly. We don't have the time to, support this turnover. Technology has kind of had to come and start to embrace this idea of, well, the technology now has to be the teacher as well as the tool. And I think that we're just kind of cresting that transition where technology is now starting to say, like, do this, and as a result, here's what happened. And so it's helping people kind of guide them, whether that's, review processing of estimates, whether that's, walking people through the requirement of a water job versus a fire job, and really telling them, spelling it out almost, hey, you need to have 2 pictures. You need to put this date in here. It helps, one, embrace the technology, and 2, it makes it easier to transition someone who has never seen a tool before to kind of guide them through that process. And so I know a lot of people kind of crown that as like AI, but it's really just about like an automated learning of how the industry is evolving, both from a process standpoint and a requirement standpoint, to embed that logic into the tools that we're using.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Ryan, anything else you want to add? This is a lot of great information. I appreciate the conversation.
I mean, I would just like to say that, again, being in this industry for 10 plus years, I'm actually very excited technology wise for where we're headed, because I feel like in 10 years seems like a long time. But when you look back at the last 10 years, it seems like a blink from a standpoint of where we started to where we are today. And just this idea of vendors collaborating in this space, and the idea of really trying to make tools that are going to help both sides of the equation. Someone mentioned to me the other day this line between InsurTech and RestoTech, which is just like the insurance side and the contract. I never heard the terms before, and I had to,
okay.
Yeah, so basically the term means like the insurance side of technology, that's the InsurTech side, and the contractor side, that's the RestoTech side, that these tools are being created to really help those audiences work better together. And that is something that I think is going to be a benefit for everyone, vendors, customers, carriers, contractors, that the more that we decide to collaborate and work together, I think the better off the industry will be as a whole from a standpoint of innovation and collaboration, that we're going to start to see some very exciting things on the horizon that, again, we touched on a little bit in this presentation, but I think even in the next 1.5 to 2 years, we'll start to see some great things in this industry.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ryan, for your time. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you at some trade shows soon. I hope you have an awesome day.
You too. Thanks, Michelle, for the opportunity.
For more Restoration Today, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, or find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts.